I'm one of the two people that understand here. Yeah, let's go. The February 28th, 2023 Committee on Ways and Means is now called to order. I will call on Councilmember Seekings for the invocation. Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might ask for a much needed moment of silence and quiet reflection, please. Thank you.
The February 14th, 2023. Moved and properly seconded. Any discussions, questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. On bids and purchases, before we move forward with the motion, 3B from the Recreation Department has been withdrawn. They want to do a little more work on it. So we won't be voting on 3B under bids and purchases. Do I hear a motion? Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Move for approval.
Item 4, Hopwa. Do I hear a second? Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on item 4, Housing and Community Development, the Hopwa grant? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Item 5, Cultural Affairs.
So the both of them is
Moved and properly seconded. We take 5 and 6 together. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Now let's vote on 5 and 6. Do I hear a motion? Moved and properly seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item 7. Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on item 7?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember Bowden.
thank you. I had a great conversation with Chief Reynolds, as well as plenty of community members who are interested in what we're talking about here is the racial bias audit and a research agreement with the University of South Carolina, a professor there to provide some the independent auditing work of what the police department's done that the racial bias audit called for. Chief Reynolds committed to presenting the data that we talked about at the last meeting at a public safety committee meeting in April. I think that's awesome. I just, one of the things that I was going to raise about this was that, you know, we're asking somebody to independently audit data that's not publicly available for anybody else to take a look at and have disagreements with. And so I truly appreciate the transparency there. I think that's fantastic. I know that people do have questions about the person who was chosen to do this. I would suggest that this goes to the Public Safety Committee give public a chance to weigh in. I don't think that 2 weeks is gonna kill this deal. I know that there was some sensitivity about if we extend this out, maybe maybe USC wouldn't be interested in going forward anymore. And I know that the other bid that came in was way over 72,930,000. So I am sensitive to the cost about this, certainly. But I think that a better process would be to take it to the Public Safety Committee meeting in 2 weeks. Now, having said that, I do really want to thank Chief Reynolds for reaching out and responding to some of the questions I had last week. And I feel a lot more comfortable with this than I would have coming here today without that. So
Just for clarification, are you suggesting I'm making a motion for deferring this for 2 weeks until it gets to the Public Safety Committee and then come back to us?
that's exactly what I'm doing. Thank you.
I'll
Do I-
second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Councilmember Shea.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I see that Steve Rumlin is present with us, and I'd like to see if he can answer some questions for us about, I think he was intimately involved with this process. And likewise, I think we all received some emails with some concerns of how this was generated. I'm not sure exactly, and I'm not shying away from the idea of this coming before the Public Safety Committee at all. But I'm not sure what we're going to accomplish by doing that. We're just going to maybe air some other things, but could I call on Steve to give us some, shed some light on how this process worked and what happened with that?
Sure. Steve?
We actually should have a couple people on Zoom as well. Cassandra Payton is
Is the
on.
microphone on?
I think so. Sorry. I think Chief Reynolds is on, Deputy Chief Walker should be on. Cassandra Payton should be on, but I'll try and answer the questions as best I can.
Can you just sort of give us an outlay of what happened with this, how this, the process with this, what took place?
Right.
I guess the question is, how did we get to this?
How did we get to where we are?
selection?
Yeah.
Is the bottom line question, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
My understanding, this did go through the procurement process. I believe we received a bid from CNA who did the yes. Yes.
There's a chief. There's a chief.
And
Was that you?
It was coming in on Zoom.
right.
I see.
So it was put out for bid. I believe we got a bid from CNA. That was the one that council member referred to that came in. I think it came in at about 182,000, which was over what we had budgeted for this. The other bid that came in was the what's before you today. And that was the bid that met all the requirements and was the right price. So that was the bid that we put before council today.
Can you just sort of explain what they're seeking to accomplish?
Again, this is an audit looking at the implementation of the racial bias recommendations from the racial bias audit. To look at the police department's implement.
I think Cassandra McSwain has her hand up and is trying to speak, so that's why we're getting some feedback.
And she may be the person to explain the procurement process.
Yes, sir. Mayor, council members, I apologize about that. I was trying to speak up, but I got muted. Essentially. how we got
Identify
to
yourself
this
for
point,
us,
council
please.
members.
Identify yourself for us, please.
This is Cassandra Payton with CPD. Essentially, I was responsible for this process, the procurement side, as well as the contracting and working with Steve on this. Essentially, back in October 2022, we did do an RFP process and we went through the procurement policy with the city. That's when we received the initial bid back from CNA. That was the only vendor that bid on the project. Obviously, the bid was tremendously over the amount that was budgeted for. So it caused us to kind of take a pause and take a look at what other ways we could accomplish the third-party audit review. Essentially, we obviously through a lot of discussions with different various universities, we tend to do some research agreements, some with cost, some with not. That is where we kind of ended up taking similar scope of work and working with USC and their partners as well. There's various, if you see the proposal in front of you, it has various entities to include Clemson University, also an independent contracting solutions company that was able to kind of work together and collaborate and look at if they were able to conduct this project for us at the cost, obviously, that we were looking for that was budgeted. And that's kind of where we ended up here. There was an RFP process again, but when we got only one bid back and it was tremendously over, we kind of went back to the drawing table to look at another collaborative way we could accomplish this project.
So was USC, did they submit as a part of the RFP?
No, sir, they did not submit as part of the RFP. They typically will not bid out research agreement projects like that. It really was more of a collaboration on our part in looking at ways to accomplish and complete the project, knowing that we were not going to get any additional bids back for this project.
Did we think about going back out with the RFP? And Sutter.
We did, yes, council member, we did look at going back out. We had spoke to procurement. And essentially, this project was sent out to over 15 vendors that do similar work. And so we did not feel that we were going to successfully receive additional bids back.
So is this a sole source?
No, sir, it's a research agreement.
Any more questions? Chief Reynolds? Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Tecklenburg and then the chief, Mayor Tecklenburg.
If I may.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, my colleagues. So when we had the presentation at our last city council meeting and the public safety committee meeting just prior to that, if I may say, this was one of the key things that we all agreed we needed to move forward on and have this review of, you know, the whole shooting match of the racial bias audit. And so that's exactly what this does. And the biggest concern, I agreed, I talked to council member about and afterwards about bringing forth the data. Let's see the numbers. And so one of the things that this agreement does, it's included in Bob Cale's, you know, details, is through the request of the police analytics is to mine or go after existing data to assess progress on implementing the audit recommendations. First step is to review and analyze work already completed by CPD, and subsequent to that, likely include comparing the 2019 data to 2023 on critical issues, and he lists all those issues, just the things that we were talking about that we wanted to hear last meeting and we didn't, right? So this moves the ball forward. It also includes robust community engagement. And it seemed to me that timing was on all our minds 2 weeks ago to get this thing going. And we've been through a process. You just heard Cassandra describe it, you know, to kind of restart it now. It would cost us a good bit of time, I think. And I just want to also give a little shout out to Bob Cale. I don't know how many of y'all know him, but he, in addition to this partnership or work that he's doing with USC for this, he's local. He's worked with the Riley Institute at the College of Charleston, and about when we had Tent City 7-8 years ago, he did a study with the Riley Institute about homelessness in the area. So he knows Charleston. He knows I think he could do a good job. So anyway, I think with the thought that we want to get this thing moving right along, I would support approving it this evening.
Chief Reynolds?
So two things. One, I did have I think a great conversation with Councilmember Bowden 2 weeks ago. He raised some good questions, and we've embraced that. We've since been preparing for a presentation, and I've committed to him and I commit to the council that we will talk about and embrace the idea of disparities, the disparate numbers that exist, which are really significant, and have some folks on the call when we present to the Public Safety Committee. I think it's April 10th, whatever that date is, to have a very good discussion and presentation about where we're at, where we've been, where we're headed when it comes to the disparities. Separately, for today's contract, I believe that there's three things that I know that you would want to answer. One, are the people here capable of doing what we need them to do? And as the mayor just said, I think we have three of some of the best experts in the business. One, Dr. Jeff Alpert from USC, who's world-renowned as well as Dr. Kale. And there's also another professor, Dr. McLean from Clemson, and they're going to be a part of this. They have a lot of access to a lot of other entities that can kind of make sense of data and why it's important, and putting it in context and giving it good denominators and making sense of that, putting it in the context of the audit, et cetera. So one, I think we have the right people on this contract. Two, I do believe we followed the procurement process. And I believe if we don't kind of follow up as quickly as we can, there are going to be substantial delays. I think that we're in a good place to move forward, and I recommend approval. And also, there was some concern that this contract does not deal with disparities and community input or engagement, and it actually is written into the contract. And that's where I think Steve, Peter was asking Steve, there's certain things that he pointed out, which page number, which line, which section, that it actually addresses those specific things that were, I think, concerned to some others. And so my recommendation is that we are able to move forward. And I don't think we could go anywhere and get anything near what we'll get with this review for even a fraction of the cost.
Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, I do have a question. Thank you. Council member, good question. I'm glad you're raising the issue. You're putting it on the front burner, and I thank you for that. You too, Councilman Saccharin. Let me ask this: if we did send it to Public Works, I'm sorry, I'm stuck on Public Works. Yeah, I'm stuck on Public Works. I got drainage on the mind. What can I say? But if it does go back to public safety, the contract is going to have more scrutiny. I'm asking, that's the effort? I mean, public safety will review the contract if it goes back to public safety. I'm not on public safety, so if we deferred it and sent it to public safety, what's going to happen in public safety? That's what I'm asking.
I think that's sort of my question too, is that we can have the public, we're going to talk about the same thing we're talking about right now. Quite frankly, we're going to review the process, what we've already heard from, and I'm just not sure what else we're going to accomplish at the end of the day.
Well, one of the aspects, was the chief just said, certain aspects is already written into the contract. I mean, I don't know whether the Public Safety Committee knew that or not. And I'm just wondering whether that review can happen. It should happen. Why didn't it happen anyway? In other words, if this is approved, why wouldn't that type review happen anyway? I'm asking. Normally it wouldn't,
Yes.
but I think in this case, the concerns raised by Councilman Bowden, I think it should still have that review.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that aspect of it. We can take this, I'm looking at the contract now, and it's got those issues in there, the 5 points, the 5 goals that they want to, they're contracted to review: traffic stops and field contacts, use of force, the complaint process, community-oriented policing practices, recruitment, hiring, promotions, et cetera. So it's in the contract. That's what's supposed to be doing. And it's supposed to have public engagement to reach out to the stakeholders as well.
My point is, go ahead and approve the funding, still have the review, and next meeting come back and report on the specifics of the contract. If there's any disagreement, you certainly can rescind, but we won't lose any time, is what I mean. I mean, are you okay with that, Councilman Bowden?
Yeah, I think so. The reason this came up is obviously it came up a couple weeks ago in a slightly different context, and similar community members who were concerned about or who brought those concerns to me to bring here at the prior meeting had similar concerns with this basically. And I'm not asking it to go back through the procurement process, just to be, I sort of agree with that assessment that, I mean, we've gotten the number of bids we're going to get. It's basically just an acknowledgement that this, maybe isn't exactly where this was all intended to go in the initial CNA audit, but what we really need right now is an analysis of the data. No doubt, and to figure out where we are now and how we move forward. And that's kind of more what this is than maybe the end product that was, exactly contemplated by CNA.
Mr. Chairman, if you would allow, I think the additional scrutiny is upon us. Okay, so I agree with moving it forward with the additional scrutiny and then coming back and reporting 2 weeks from now, but we wouldn't have to delay the funding for that. You know.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have one question. It looks like a lot of the scope of the work has been already identified. It's been laid out. Were folks from CPAC involved, at least in initial conversations on developing this scope of work? Because the scope of work is critically important. That's going to dictate the findings. That's going to dictate the data that we receive. So
Right.
is CPAC involved in development of the scope of work?
It was certainly discussed with CPAC. I mean, these are things that we've been talking. These are things that we've been talking about all along in CPAC. In CPAC. Right. And Councilmember Shade mentioned the 5 areas. I mean, those are all things, we actually have committees on CPAC that deal with some of those, the traffic stops particularly.
If CPAC was involved in the development of this scope of work for USC?
I don't believe they reviewed the contract, no.
Mr. Chairman and Councilmember Sacrin and Steve, Jillian Edson with the PD also has her hand up. She works with CPAC.
Yes.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm the Director of Procedural Justice and Research at the CPD. And I will mention that from my understanding, CPAC did not review the actual scope of work. That was taken directly from the recommendations from CNA. CNA thought it really important that after, along this process, that we get a sense of how well the implementation of this entire effort was done. So really the effort here is to assess fidelity, which is, how the extent to which the recommendations were implemented. Now, I do know that a lot of the areas I believe that CPAC has brought up in discussions about, the racial bias audit and the outputs they want to see from the racial bias audit are addressed in this contract. We will be including CPAC along the way in the assessment. We are actually going to be working with them on a community survey that's a part of this initiative. We're going to be partnering with Dr. Kale and Dr. Alpert on making sure that, is formatted correctly. We're using better software. And also this document, this proposal includes a lot of interaction with CPAC, interviews of stakeholders, and getting them involved in forums. And so I do believe that a lot of the concerns that were addressed by CPAC about the data and about the public perception and about how the community really believes racial disparities may or may not have changed is covered in this scope of work.
Any more discussion? I have a question, and maybe it's not a fair question, but you did say that you did not see it before it went out. Am I correct? And if you didn't, would you have added anything to it?
I believe, sir, that this is an extremely comprehensive evaluation proposal for the cost. And as someone who's done research before and worked with outside parties for a huge evaluation of this nature, normally they run in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this one includes qualitative and quantitative data analysis, interactions with community members, interactions with stakeholders, a subject matter expert review, along with reports that will be presented to City Council and the Public Safety Committee and made available to the public. And I think most importantly, in my role and responsibilities, this proposal also gives us recommendations and guidance on how we can best evaluate disparity, evaluate biases, and make sure that we are adhering to best practices in using the data that this audit helped us put in place.
Thank you for that answer. I do have a motion on the floor for defer. And it was second by Councilman Sacrin, if I'm not mistaken. In order for us to move forward, are you going to have us vote on the deferral? Are you going to withdraw it and then we get another motion? because the deferral takes precedence.
Right. I mean, I'd say we vote on the deferral. I understand, people have a different view than me. I'm, not begrudging anybody that, but I'd ask to have a vote on. the
Okay,
deferral.
it's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer this and to send it to public safety for further review? All in favor, say aye. Can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Gregg. Councilmember Shealy.
Nay.
Councilmember Saccharin. Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Brady. Councilmember Gregory.
Nay.
Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings. Councilmember Shade. Councilmember Bowden. Councilmember Appel.
The nays have it.
Count,
Oh, I'm sorry.
so,
Mayor.
well, Councilmember Hart. Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Parker.
She,
Yes,
she's supposed to be.
she's joining us virtually. All right, Councilmember Parker is not voting. Mayor Tecklenburg.
The nays have it. Do I hear?
Second.
I had Councilmember Shealy as the motion. Who was the second from earlier? All right, thank you.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussions or questions or amendments?
I do, since Councilmember Shealy made the motion, would you allow, I guess, the amendment for it to go to public safety, even though we're approving the funding for additional scrutiny with the contract? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, moved and properly seconded that we amend the motion to send it to our Public Safety Committee for further review, but that we approve it tonight. Okay. All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. I'm sorry,
No, I
Councilmember.
just want to ask a question. What date would that be?
It is the second Monday in March. Hold on one
Second
moment.
Tuesday?
I'll pull that date up
Monday.
for you.
So we'll still be here. We wouldn't be, all the council members that's going on the trip will still be here, right?
Correct. Yes. So the next one is scheduled for March 13th.
Okay. I just want.
Okay. All right, let's,
And-
yes.
Mr. Chairman, were there any nays? Okay. All right.
No, I don't think there were.
Thank
any
you.
nays.
All right.
Item number 8. Moved in properly. I'm gonna find them in a minute. Item 8. Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on item 8? If not, all in favor say aye. The ayes have it. Item 9. Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on item 9? All in favor say aye. Item 10. You want to take them each? Okay. 14. Yes. Okay. Do I hear? Okay, which the motion is
10
10
through 14.
10 through 14, okay? And it's been properly seconded. All in favor of taking 10 through 14 together, say aye. The ayes have it. Now let's vote on 10 through 14. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Item 15, stormwater.
I move for approval. I know Councilmember Seeking is going to vote against this one, but I'm gonna move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on the item? If not, all in favor say aye. The ayes have it. Item 16. Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. And now I will call on Chairman Ross to give us a report on the Real Estate Committee meeting. Chairman Ross.
Like the sound of that. Chairman Ross. All right, I have, let the record show. Let the record show there are no titles at 31 Littleton. That is for sure. The City of Charleston Committee on Real Estate met yesterday afternoon at 3:30. We had a very brief meeting. The only item on our agenda, other than annexations, was approval of a fourth lease amendment between the City of Charleston and EcoVest East Shed Development LLC. This is the space currently occupied by Share House and Bodega over off of King Street there on Ann Street. And that was unanimously approved. If folks watching on YouTube have not been over there, it's a great place. You can get a drink, get a cup of coffee, and go check out a children's museum across the street. It's really got something for everybody. That was approved unanimously. And then, of course, we unanimously approved the two annexations on our agenda, both residential properties, one in Councilman Waring's district, one in Councilman Shade's district. And we had a discussion about annexation, communication, outreach. Molly is continuing to do a great job. And we concluded our meeting after that. And with that said, I'd like to move that into for approval.
Moved and properly seconded. All in favor of item 17A and B, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Yes, Mayor Tecklenburg.
May I just make a couple of comments?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman and my colleagues. Number 9 on the agenda was our renewal of support for re-entry program you're all familiar with. I don't know if all our citizens are, but we help to re-employ former offenders coming out of prison. And the two things that make the biggest difference for former criminals going back to jail is whether they get a job and a place to live. So helping them get employment is really, it's the right human thing to do, but it's a public safety thing to do. Number 8, I just want to say I always wanted to own an argon laser. So we're buying one. That's a great thing. The number 6, the public art initiatives. We really could stand to do some more public art in the city of Charleston, and hopefully Bloomberg will help us do so if we get approval of this grant. But most importantly, I wanted to note on an item under bids and purchases, the amendment to our water plan. It wasn't a lot of money, like $15,000, but this will be the first time, as far as I know, in history that the city of Charleston plans to begin and maintain long-term water table measurements to measure how much water is in our water table. As we learned in the Netherlands, it really makes a difference long-term, particularly with rising sea levels, to keep track of where your water table is. All right, thank you.
Is there anything else to come before this committee? If not, this meeting's adjourned.